When did bashing the NRL become the only socially acceptable form of classism in the country? In a world that sees so many people walking on eggshells around the prospect of offending people, I've had to marvel at the ease in which so many public personalities have been able to level nasty-spirited assertions towards an entire group of people. In this case, the rugby league community. In the wake of the NRL's plan to restart on May 28, social media hacks and mainstream journalists alike have pilloried the sport with venomous commentary, slamming the code, its administrators, its players and its fans, strongly implying that anybody involved with the sport and its decision must be inherently moronic. Now, if said commentators were willing to engage in the conversation on the basis of germ theory or public health policy, then no doubt it would have added a valuable contribution to the public narrative. But this hasn't really happened. The NRL's decision to play on at the end of May, now vindicated by uniform green lights granted from state and federal government health authorities, was instead met with a barrage of childish derision and classist rhetoric. What would these NRL dickheads know about science anyway? Here are a few choice tweets gaining traction in the thousands this week. This one comes from the prominent Fairfax cartoonist Kathy Wilcox when referring to the recent social distancing breaches. She tweeted, "Isn't the expression bringing the game into disrepute an oxymoron?" No, Kathy. You were close though. You're just the moron. And by the way, your cartoons are poorly drawn and lack objective insight. It's easier to win a Walkley than a Logie these days, it seems. But the real worrying aspect of her comments is that this is a woman who has championed a range of commendable causes in the past, like violence against women and affordable housing. And yet, when the lens of this presumably compassionate view of the world is focused on a game that has grown from the country's working class roots, we get nothing but spurn, condescension and disdain. Here's another tweet met with much backslapping and wankish wry grins from the followers of veteran journalist Mike Carlton. He said, "NRL players are the thickest, stupidest sports people in Australia. Discuss." Okay, Mike, I will have a bit of a chat about it since you brought it up, but try not to choke on your expensive Penfolds Bin 95 Shiraz while the battlers are speaking. Imagine for a moment we remove the words NRL players with another eclectic group of people like, let's say, women or the elderly. He would have been deplatformed quicker than a carnivore at a kale festival. But it seems to chastise an entire group of people on the basis of the actions of a few, so long as they support rugby league, doesn't only make you immune to such social sanctions, it warrants collective commendation, as though the view somehow has made the world a better place. Well, it hasn't. It's a bigoted view. And bigotry generally makes the world a less inviting place. It makes it less enjoyable. Now, is the NRL filled with constantly law-abiding neurologists? No. The sport still has its problems with domestic violence, drug addiction, gambling, issues we try to excoriate comedically here on the show each week. But the social problems this cohort of privileged commentators would have you believe has been cultivated within the confines of the game is simply not accurate. These are the same issues experienced more prevalently by people in lower socioeconomic brackets. The data's out there for all to see. Rugby league is a mirror for scourges like alcoholism and domestic violence. It's not the author of them. And when you look at the great strides the NRL has taken in recent times to stamp out these problems in the game, it makes this contempt for rugby league and everybody in it even more galling. Penalties are harsher than they've ever been. A great deal of funding has been invested into mental health programs to counsel players suffering from depression and anxiety, a proven precursor to violence and alcoholism. Inclusivity has also been at the forefront of the game's modern direction. Just look at our last campaign push. The message is clear. Come one, come all. So long as you love the game, we want you here too. The game has also been made more inviting for women to enjoy, which is a great thing, and finally some money invested into the women's game. Now, you'd think these landmark gains would be met with a softening from the elite, but it hasn't. If anything, it seems to have strengthened their resolve. The shoves seem harder now than ever to keep the blue-collared game away from the sophisticated people's dinner parties. This, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, is classism in the raw. And invariably, it's coming from the people who claim to be the most vocal about protecting the country's less fortunate. Left-wing journos, social activists, ABC's Offsider program, Peter Fitzsimons. There seems to be a pattern here. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I too am left-leaning. I think a country is judged by how well it treats its weakest members. So my message to these brazen NRL bashers is this. Make no mistake, if you're deriding people associated with the NRL for being drunks, criminals and stupid, you're not making some highbrow intellectual point. You're no better than a caricatured aristocrat laughing at the poor. Please spread the word around your respective country clubs and croquet tournaments. The NRL is willing to accept your membership now. We do not discriminate on the basis of race, gender, age, sexual orientation or education. We hope you get there one day too.